Good evening, everyone. Welcome to City Hall. This is the Tuesday, May 29th, 2018 regular meeting of the Committee on Public Service. The members present are myself, I'm Rebecca Lisi, City Councilor at Large. Filling in for the chair, James Leahy, who will be joining us a little bit later. And to my right is Councilor at Large, Joe McGivern. The first item on the agenda is council review the mayoral appointment of Ms. Hilda Roque for the Board of Appeals. Ms. Roque, I saw, is here. Do you want to come in and join us, Hilda? Thanks. You can take this seat with the microphone and just hit the button on the bottom to make the green light go on. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So this is let's see. The term expires. Albert Bowler, effective 2017. She will be filling his unexpired term, and said term will expire July 1st, 2018. Is that correct? So it seems that we have a letter from 2017 appointing you a member of the Board of Appeals. And it says that Ms. Roque will be replacing Albert Bowler effective October 1st, 2017, and she will be filling his unexpired term, which will expire July 1st, 2018.
Motion removed from the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. So it seems that we're getting to this a little bit late. Have you been serving on the board as of yet?
No.
So this appointment is just being reviewed at this point in time. And forgive me, but I'm just trying to get clear on what this letter is saying. So it says that the term will expire July 1st, 2018. That would only be about a month from now. So then is the idea that you'll be filling out Albert's term and then we'll be reappointing you following that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And have you been briefed as to the responsibilities, as to what goes on with the Board of Appeals?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to speak a little bit about how you feel that you'll be able to contribute to that board?
Yes, I'm a long-term resident of Holyoke. I also direct a business, and with my business background and also with knowledge in terms of construction and zoning, and I think with that background I'll be able to help out with the licensing also. I mean, I have also had to go through processes to get licensing, so I know a little bit of the process. So I believe so.
So you're bringing some personal experience in moving through zoning bylaws.
Yes.
To this board in particular. This board is going to be an appeals board, so it's where there are conflicts in interpreting the law that's really going to be what you will need to deal with. Could you speak to any ideas about how you'll be able to do that impartially and fairly?
I was a social worker before I was an executive director, and most of my time I spent it in court because I was a social worker for a youth program, and like I said, I spend the most times in court advocating for my clients, and I was able to learn about different laws of Massachusetts law, and taking part in helping lawyers, because some of them were court appointed. Actually, most of them were court appointed, and I had to do some research and like paralegal research, and acted as a paralegal as well as a social worker. So I learned a little bit more about law, even though that I didn't take it. I mean, you take that as in school, in like business law when I was doing my business degree, but I also I had the experience doing that for lawyers, like court-appointed lawyers.
So being able to interpret the law and
Yes.
look at the language and really understand the letter of the law. Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. Thank you. Counselor McGivern, do you have any questions?
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Lisi. And Hilda, thank you for coming forward and,
Thank you.
stepping forward to serve the city. It's certainly noble. And listening and reading your qualifications, I don't have any questions about that. I think you have the right ability to be able to serve on the Board of Appeals. One thing about the Board of Appeals I would just like you to keep in mind is it's, although a very important board, it is very limited in what it can do. Mostly it deals with a variance, and mostly the variance is about a dimensional control that is not quite in or not quite going along with what the zoning ordinance dictates itself. And the way a variance is granted is if and only if a hardship can be proven. Now, that sounds like a lot with your paralegal experience, and I think your degrees and your life experience. I think you can understand that it's not rewriting zoning. It's not overturning something that happened or something that was denied. It's looking to see if there's a hardship in granting a variance. And if you're willing to do that, I think that's great, and you'll certainly have our support. But we just ask that you don't let other people who try to use the Board of Appeals differently, open up the front door. Just keep them away from you.
Definitely. I'm a very honest and transparent person, and I do that as an executive director for my organization. So I don't let anybody influence me as a person, and my values are very strong, so I don't feel like that's something that I will let nobody influence. So.
Thank you. You read my question better than I stated it.
Counselor Michael Sullivan at large, as well as Counselor Bartley, Ward 3, are here joining us this evening. Thanks for coming down. Any questions from either of you? Okay. So I think that we've heard what we need to. I do hope that there's a little bit of training and baton passing so that you understand what the...
That's exactly what my understanding is, that I have to go through a training that will last for a couple of weeks.
Oh, good.
So.
Yeah, because it is very technical, and there's only 3 different ways that you can be that can define a hardship. There's only 3 different ways, and the criteria is very specific. So I do hope that, again, there's some baton passing and training happening to get you on board, and so that you'll have success on there.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to.
With that, is there a
Make a motion that we approve the mayor's appointment to the Board of Appeals and recommend that to the full city council.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So the motion passes. Thanks so much for coming down, Hilda. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda is a mayoral appointment of Ms. Kristen Beam for the Holyoke Development and Industrial Corporation. Ms. Beam, if you want to join us, you can take that same seat. So the communication that we have from the mayor is more recent than the one from Ms. Roque. Yep. This is dated May 11th, 2018. Subject to your approval, I hereby appoint the following person as a member of the Holyoke Economic Development and Industrial Council, otherwise known as HEDIC. So this seat for Ms. Kristen Beam will represent the at-large sector. Ms. Beam will be replacing Mr. Kip Foley and will serve a 3-year term that will expire on June 30th, 2021.
We could take it off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Lisi, if I could.
Sure.
I just would like to, as required, make disclosure, full disclosure. Yes. I'm a member of the Board of HEDIC myself.
Yes, I do
Also a
know
mayoral
that.
appointment. And I'm not going to ask you any tough questions.
Okay, good.
But I have to, there's nothing that would gain
you.
from me interviewing a candidate or voting for a candidate, so therefore I do not have a conflict. But I just wanted to disclose that.
Thank
We're
you.
on TV too, so we're telling everybody in the world about this.
Sounds good.
Great. So I'm assuming that Mayor Morse has briefed you about the responsibilities that you would be serving as a at-large member on HEDIC.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit about how you understand your skill set to fit with this board?
Sure. As far as HEDIC is concerned, my role is less in terms of having the experience in terms of economic development, but being able to be a member of the public who can review projects and deem and make an opinion as far as whether or not everything has been taken into account, environmental. Have residents been taken into account? Is there inclusion involved in the? Is it something that will benefit Holyoke for years to come? Mm-hmm. So less so economic development experience and more of being someone who's good at sparring and having opinions and and coming to conclusions based on the information. If I don't have enough information, going back and asking for the right information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're essentially representing the public and trying to ascertain whether or not projects coming before HEDIC have a community value.
Yes.
Great. And then, so I heard you say a little bit about the ability to spar, but I think what you're saying there is ask tough questions.
Yeah, sparring is a word that I use at work, so we do that a lot. It's a very healthy way of having a project come to fruition, that you have an idea, and then everyone at the table is of equal importance and has an opinion that can help move that project and inform that project and improve that project. It's a way that I'm very much used to working on projects.
So very iterative in a sense.
Yep.
Great. Councilor McGivern? The most senior member? I forget how we do this.
Yes.
Okay. So Councilor McGivern just notified me that per the change in our rules for this year, we should be having a third member sit with us. Mm-hmm. Third member is going to be the most senior member, and I believe that makes it Councilor Bartley.
I don't believe I have a conflict of interest, but if there's a perception of a conflict of interest, I will address that and yield to the chair and to another member.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just so I may, the rule is not, I just want to make it clear, it's really at the discretion of the chair, so it's not a senior member type of a rule, so it's the chair, and I'm not going to be, I mean, Mike, may I just, Mike, Councilor Sullivan?
So I'm going to beg your pardon. So if it's
It's the discretion of the chair. Any other counselor present, the chair of the meeting can call up that counselor to serve until such time as a regular member of the committee appears.
Mm-hmm. And I see that as having a third member present would be unrelated to Councilor McGivern stepping away from the table, correct?
Yes, it could be. It could be. I would say just good practice would be have a full committee present at the table. And again, the rule. I'm just commenting on the rule because I wrote the rule. So it's really at the discretion of the chair. It can take any person. So it doesn't have to be senior member or their most experienced member or any other criteria. It's just really discretion of the chair. And I forgot our city council rule. It might be 67 or 68. I don't remember, and I'll ask Ryan to sort of put that in the minutes to just so you can log it in. Per city council rule X,
Sure.
that the chair lady called up a present city councilor to serve on the committee until for the time being.
Sure. So then if it's not the senior member, I would defer to the two members present. Do either of you have the volition to serve on the
I like Dave being referred to as senior, so.
Seniors got about 8.
So come on down, Counselor Bartley.
I can only say for a little bit, but I think through this vote, I think I should stay, okay? So,
So again, I think that, I agree with Counselor McGivern that I don't believe that he has a conflict here because he doesn't have a financial interest in the matter. But in case there's an appearance of a conflict, it may be best for him to sit out the vote. So just to recap, Ms. Beam was just talking about her role on the board as a member of the public and serving, making sure that the projects that come before HEDIC are actually going to serve the interests of the community, and that she's looking forward to looking over projects and creating an iterative process. So that's where we're at. Do you have any questions, Councilor Bartley?
I'm just going to let her finish her. Did you finish your opening statement, Ms. Bean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I
Yes.
didn't want to. Okay, so the HEDIC board has been a presence in Holyoke for a long time, Holyoke Economic Development Industrial Corporation. And so I believe they have monthly meetings, although they probably take a couple months off in the summer like most of us do. But they also vote on real property transfers, and they also vote on loans as well. So it's a board that's been some talk about possibly merging it with the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority, and some of us really want to do that because, you know, HEDIC and HRA really have parallel tracks, and why do we have? But of course, they're different creatures of state law, so we would need to have a home rule petition, and we haven't reached that point in our conversation, though I think Councilor Sullivan and others have kind of been pressing for that. So my standard question for, but both those are very important boards, and they're, you know, mayoral appointees, but you've got to tell me and you've got to tell us that you're an independent person. And I've had other people, and I'm not going to say, oh yes, I'm an independent person, but when the rubber hits the road, I have at least 2 documented things that I could easily prove that the mayor came in to the authority or to the commission, said we're going to do this, and what happened was that the will of the Holyoke City Council was circumvented, and I don't think that's right. So I'm going to say, I mean, we appreciate you serving. I appreciate you because these are generally volunteer deals, but they're very important boards, and they have a lot of authority because you're talking about property and you're talking about money that you're going to take votes on. So I've got to hear your pledge of independence and whether or not you can sort of stand up to the mayor and stand up to other board members.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Councilor Bartley, or the reaffirmation of. I think what it comes down to is I've been in the Valley since 1998. I fell in love with Holyoke very quickly. I started out helping clean waterways as part of AmeriCorps. I've seen how the Connecticut River is so important to this valley. I've seen how the legacy of our immigrant past and our industrial past is really important and a part of our future. So from, you know, utilizing the canals in a way today that's forward thinking, the way that we are doing that, and then as far as, you know, my daughter was born at Holyoke Birthing Center. I want to see a Holyoke that's thriving when she's, you know, my age. I want to see a Holyoke that is full renaissance. So as far as being behooved to the mayor, I definitely see that this for me is a separation from that. So this is me serving as a community member, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that. I've been in the private sector. I've finally reached a point in my career where I feel very confident in doing something like this, and I'd like to use my skills in a public forum versus you know, just doing it at work or private pursuits. So I very much want to serve from my heart and from my values in terms of this. And I mean, yes, I'm friends with the mayor, but it's, you know, it's a friendship. It's, you know, I don't have like he's never called me to ask me to do, to do something that I don't want to do. So I think it's a really valid question, and asking it of the appointee for the Court of Appeals, it's important. It's important for any board member or possible board member to talk about. I'm here for the city of Holyoke. I'm at large. I'm here to speak for the city.
So you really have to think of it as almost a fiduciary, and so there's really no higher duty under law than being a fiduciary. And so your loyalty is not to the mayor, or your loyalty is to the city. So that's
Absolutely.
gotta be, and sometimes there's a conflict. Okay, but thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Councilor Bartley.
Have you been following the HEDIC board's activity as of recently?
I've talked a little bit of some of the activities that are coming forward. I think I would want to know them more deeply as a member of the board before I speak to any of them. I think there's just so much nuance to every project that I wouldn't want to speak specifically to anything. Yeah.
Are there any types of projects that you are excited about working on in particular? Like, is it the land transfers, or is it property, or?
I think I would say that there is an opportunity for, I know that these are more of industrial projects, but I think there is an opportunity to think about the range of projects available, especially with thinking of the future of the redevelopment authority and HEDIC together, that there's certain streams that could support smaller projects that would help bring the city up, not just bigger projects that, what HEDIC offers might not be exactly enough to be an incentive. So just using the pool of money we have in a very smart way, depending on the size of the project.
So scaling the incentives. Mm-hmm. Great. And Councilor Sullivan?
Good.
Hi, how are you, Councilor Sullivan?
Good.
Nice to meet you.
You too. Can you tell me, Kristen, have you had any experience or background in any construction projects, building projects?
Nope, not specifically, although several years ago, from 2007 to 2013, I was a landlord of a mixed-use property. And so, we definitely had our projects, our contracted projects that we worked on to improve the space. I don't have specific construction experience, though.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term brownfields?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. Can you tell me a little about your knowledge of brownfields?
Well, brownfields would be certain spots that at some point in the past were contaminated, and so in order to use them, they have to be cleaned up.
Yeah. In Holyoke, almost every site we have is in some way contaminated, whether it be asbestos, PCBs, something. It's quite a daunting task to get through some of these projects. Are you familiar with the term an LSP?
No, I'm not.
A licensed site planner? A lot of these, it's not just the cleaning up the site, but what has to go into it as far as the utilities and stuff before construction can begin. Do you have any background or anything that would lend to experience in that field?
Well, I from what I understand, each project, my role would be to understand that project and do the due diligence to understand those pieces of the project. I don't, as a member of the Holyoke community, I don't think it's my as part of the role in the on the board to know those ins and outs right away. I think it's more of a spending the time on each project and learning about each project.
Okay. One of the things you quoted earlier was industry being still a part of our future. One of the concerns I have with HEDIC in its current form is it just waits for projects to come to it. Can you tell me, is there anything you would do different or ideas outside the box that you would have to change things in HEDIC?
Well, also my understanding is that what we have to offer within the bounds of HEDIC might not be enough of an incentive for a corporation or an industry to come in. So what we need to think about is how to think more thoughtfully about the revenue streams themselves that make them economically make sense, or it makes sense in a business sense for industry. That we might not be offering what they're looking for.
Okay, I mean, given your current employment and stuff, would you have the extra time and the abilities to go out and be looking for opportunities outside the city? I see big projects, Chinese rail companies going to Springfield, major distribution companies going to Westfield. I'm sure their economic people haven't just sat by and waited for the projects to come to them. Do you have any ideas as far as what we can do to attract other?
Well, as far as I understand it, that wouldn't be part of my role. The part of my role would be to review projects that come in and as to whether or not they are fit for the Holyoke community.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that what I hear, Kristen, what I hear you saying is that HEDIC may be able to play a role in restructuring and rescaling some of the incentives that we offer to work alongside of the Planning and Economic Development Department, which would be doing the recruiting.
Right.
And HEDIC's role is to figure out how to sweeten the pot, so to say. So I appreciate your interest in trying to restructure and rescale some of those incentives. I think I'm all set in terms of questions. Are there any questions from other committee members?
No, so I'll make a motion that we recommend Ms. Beam to the full city council.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the appointment and recommend approval to the full city council. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 2-0 for this vote. Thank you. Thanks so much for
Thank you
coming
very
down.
much, Councilor Lisi and Councilor Bartley and Councilor McGivern.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, third on our agenda is a mayoral appointment of Mr. Price Armstrong to serve on the Conservation Commission. Motion to take this up?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Price, welcome.
Hello.
So we know Price from his active involvement on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. And I want to know if you're going to be retaining that position as you are being considered for the Conservation Commission position.
Yeah, much to my wife's chagrin, I will be retaining the vice chairmanship of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, in addition to taking on this position.
Great. I'm really excited about the work that you've been doing with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, not only the advocacy, but the community works that you've been working to produce, such as the River Roll and Stroll.
Thank you.
So thank you for that work and making something really quite impressive out of that committee, along with your other committee members. Okay, so Conservation Commission, I know that you had requested this position in particular. Do you want to speak to why you were interested in serving on the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, sure. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm a professional urban planner. I'm actually a certified planner by the American Institute of Certified Planners. So I have a fairly robust knowledge of sort of urban planning issues. I've worked for actually a few years before I even came to live in Holyoke. I was working with Andrew Smith, the director of conservation and sustainability, and my path crossed his again with the development of the open space and recreation plan, which that was in my role on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. So when I was looking through the list of open commissions and committees, I saw the Conservation Commission was open, and I liked working with Andrew. I thought my background would fit. I clicked with him. I know he's going to be staffing the commission, and so I requested it. And since then, he and I have talked a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of what the commission does, and specifically a lot about wetland permitting, which I'm again, broadly familiar with wetlands and sort of the legal framework in which they operate, and really excited to dig my hands a little bit deeper.
Great, thank you. Other committee members?
Fire Mr. Bartley. Thank you, Councilor Lisi. Price, welcome, and double stepping forward. We appreciate that, and I agree. Your work with the bicycle issues, bicycle committee has been tremendous, and I know you know Andrew, and I know you appreciate Andrew as we all do. So I'll get right to a question, and I don't have any questions on your credentials. They speak for themselves, especially in this area. But my question is this. Conservation is extremely important to any community. I think it's important to people who believe in the environment. I think it's important to people who believe in protecting the environment. Economic development is very important to municipals, communities, especially older ones like us who are looking to reinvent ourselves. We are not a bedroom community, even though we have a lot of wonderful residential neighborhoods that we do and we work hard to protect. But to protect our residential neighborhood, to keep it stable, we have to have a stable business community. Can you talk about how you would handle the sometime conflicts of conservation rules and economic development and projects that are important to the city also?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've been thinking about. So in a prior role, I was a capital budget analyst for MassDOT. So I'm definitely familiar with the budget requirements and sort of the fiscal realities of operating any sort of public entity. And under Prop 2.5, new development is really crucial to keeping up with just the cost of inflation for teachers, fire, police, et cetera. And so, you know, I know it's kind of like a typical answer, but obviously you have to find a balance, right? You know, we have a lot of infill opportunities, and as Councilor Sullivan was asking about earlier, a lot of brownfields that are very difficult to develop, but they are available. So, you know, but that said, if a developer wants to come in and do greenfield development within the 100-foot buffer of a wetland, you know, that's going to come across the commission's desk. And I know that there are some tools available for like transferring wetland. Obviously, that adds on to the cost of the project. That said, wetlands, my understanding is they provide tremendous public benefit. And to Councilor Bartley's point earlier on in a previous questioning, ultimately, my responsibility is to the public good and to the city of Holyoke. So you know, it's going to be case by case, obviously, but in response, I would just say, like, I understand the incredible need of new development, new economic development, adding to Holyoke's tax base. My wife works at the Morgan School, so we definitely understand the need of a stable tax base and what it goes to provide. That said, as a member of the Conservation Commission, my role will be to ensure that we aren't compromising our open space, our wetlands, and frankly the very valuable services in terms of water filtration, water quality, and just you know, wildlife preservation and quality of life that they provide. So it's a balance.
Thank you. All set.
Councilor Bartley?
Thank you. So I guess I'll just background Price. I was on this committee for a year and a half, a few years ago. So I got kind of used to asking these questions. And I kind of ask this, I don't ask always the same one every time, but I do try to, I am mindful that these are volunteer positions, very mindful of that. Not all of them that come before us. Some of them are paid, and I think there's a little more of a responsibility. And in my prior example, one of the ones that I'm concerned about, they're paid positions. And so not only paid positions, there's possible benefits to that as well. And I feel some of the votes taken, the examples I could cite, I didn't think they were in the best interest of the city. But I will say this, the Conservation Commission, as far as I'm concerned, has been nothing but a really help to the city. I will say that there are several attorneys I know that deal with the board regularly. They don't necessarily agree with me, but the record shows that though the Conservation Commission may be a little more deliberate in its review process, they've approved, I think, almost 100% of the projects. Yes, there are conditions that come before it, I like the fact that you've worked with Andrew before. I've worked on at least one committee with Andrew, I think two actually, so I know he's always prepared and he's a very conscientious person. I also appreciate the fact that all your volunteer work that we got to enjoy over at the Roll and Stroll on the South Hadley Vietnam Veterans Bridge. I thought that was a really wonderful event that you helped put together, and I saw all the tremendous work. So you're a conscientious person, and now I know that I didn't realize your wife was a school teacher, so that's or a professional in the school department. So that's really exciting to hear as well. So,
Speech therapist, just for the record.
a professional, yeah, professional, but great, professional in the school department. So that's very exciting, and I appreciate your background and your willingness to be a part of this. So you did answer my question relative. I can't emphasize it though enough. You are a fiduciary, not to the mayor, not to the city council. You're a fiduciary to the city of Holyoke, and you know that, however you want to define it, but to me, there's going to be decisions that you're going to have to make. They're going to be sometimes not pleasant, and you've got to be able to hear both sides, and you've got to be able to speak up. And I've seen conservation commissioners just sit back, and ultimately they vote yay or nay, but they don't give any reasoning for it. I mean, that is very frustrating when I've been at meetings and I just hear a no. I want to scream why, but I'm not in a position to do that. I mean, sometimes you hear that at city council. I want to scream why. Why did Councilor X vote no? Well, they don't necessarily have to explain themselves, but it sure would be nice if the councilors would, and if you as a commissioner would give your reasons on the microphone so they can be documented, so we can at least understand your rationale. So I would ask you to consider committing to that as well. So if you want to respond to that, I know that was a bit of a soliloquy there, but if you want to respond to any of that, you can. If not, you're good.
My silver tongue always gets the best of me, so I don't think you'll have that problem.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I really appreciate hearing that you're looking forward to finding balance and compromises that work for both our need to develop economically while also preserving the public value that conservation land provides the city. With that, I don't have any further questions.
Oh, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Just one thing. You now know that also one member of the commission can serve as on the CPC, so you're aware of that too. Okay, now HEDIC doesn't have that, or neither does the library commissioners. I think there's a couple other boards here tonight, but Park and Rec does. So that's a 9-person committee as well, and now that committee is going to control a lot of cash. So once you start to get worked up in the conservation board, perhaps you'll consider volunteering on the CPC. My hope is that some of the will rotate on and rotate off, so we get different perspectives. Although we didn't require that in the ordinance, but maybe we'll make an amendment to it down the road. Although I don't even know if we can. I'll talk to Joe. Joe's a guru about some of these things, but hopefully you can volunteer yourself to serve on that. Now it'll be 3 boards. Maybe that's overload, but you're aware of it, and that's good enough.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
If there's no further discussion, I make a motion to approve the appointment and to recommend that to the full city council.
Motion made and seconded to approve this appointment. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Sorry, you guys beat me to it. 3-0. I just wanted to note for the record, since I didn't read it in previously, that this is going to be a 1-year term that will expire February 1st, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And item number 4 is motion made and
Second.
seconded. All in favor? Aye. To review a mayoral appointment of Israel Rivera to the Parks and Rec Commission. I saw Mr. Rivera is here. Please join us at the microphone. Great.
Hello, how you
Welcome.
guys doing?
Good, thank you. Okay, so let's just see. April 25th, 2018, Mayor Morse writes to the City Council, subject to your approval, I hereby appoint the following individual to serve as Commissioner of the Parks and Rec for the City of Holyoke, Mr. Israel Rivera. who will be replacing Terry Murphy, who is present this evening, and will serve a 3-year term. Said term will expire on June 30th, 2021. Okay, so Mr. Rivera, following the same format that we've been using here this evening, can you speak a little bit about your interest in the Parks and Rec Commission and what skills you feel that you're going to be able to bring to that board?
Well, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Israel Rivera. I am a longtime resident of Holyoke. My whole life I've played baseball, basketball, flag football. I've played in the community. I've been involved in a lot of the parks within the city, and I've always, as a kid, dreamed of how I could help contribute in reshaping how the parks, especially the baseball fields, look within the community. That has helped me. Well, that led me to particularly want to be a part of the Parks and Recs department. Also, the most recent ambition that I had was trying to get the Ely basketball court remodeled, and so far it seems like it's coming to fruition. Again, I don't know the rest of the pieces because I'm not in that loop yet, but when I get into the loop, the idea is to try to help steer the projects forward and continue to move them forward on a pace that would actually be more ideal for us as a board and the community as a whole. Also, I've been involved in a lot of I've organized 3 different community basketball tournaments, one in the Flats, one on Lyman, the Lyman Skate Park, another one at Springdale Park. The idea behind those were to try to highlight different parks within the city of Holyoke and to try to, at the time I was employed at the Holyoke Safe and Successful Youth Initiative. And while employed there, I took a group so the Holyoke Safe and Successful Youth Initiative was a proven risk program for youth ages 14 to 24 that were incarcerated or adjudicated, I believe is the word, young men. And my job there was to try to help enter them into society and have them gain like everyday functional skills. And within that project, I held the basketball tournaments. We took the parks and tried to beautify them to the best of our capabilities with the monies that were available. So at the time when I was working at SSYI, we helped Holyoke Housing repaint the whole basketball court at Tefford Apartments, and you see now that it's like a Laker color, purple and yellow. Wasn't our choice, that was Holyoke Housing. I would never chose that. Then
Strike one from a Celtic fan.
I'm a LeBron James fan too, that's crazy. But then at the Lyman Park, at the skate park, we created a small garden while employed at SSYI. It's still there, but it's defunct because I no longer work there and SSYI no longer exists. I would try to somehow see if I can get the Lyman Boys and Girls Club involved to try to take care of that garden and bring it back to life. Along with that, right now, I've organized a community cleanup throughout the city, and this is focused around the basketball court at Ely Park and Pina Park, mostly for the kids. And the kids have been helping me out, the kids from Youth Rap Program with Sandy Rojas and the kids from the Tefford Boys and Girls Club with Flor Delgado. I'm saying a lot of ums too. I took a class on that, it didn't work. But aside from that, that's pretty much it. I mean, my passion is for Holyoke through and through. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. Can you just say again what SSY stands for?
So it's HSSYI, but SSYI is Safe and Successful Youth Initiative, and it was a grant that was put together by Governor Deval Patrick back in 2012, I believe. It was funded at first fully at $8 million, went down to like 3 or 4, but from what I've heard, it's gone back up to like $8 to $10 million. ROCA has the dollars for that now. That's why ROCA is now in Holyoke.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that you
Kind of broke my heart, but.
you understand where these different funding streams have been and where they are. And
So working in the nonprofit world, I've been working in the nonprofit since I was like 14 at the Boys and Girls Club. Then 19, I got laid off. About 21, I went to prison for a while. I admit it, wear it on my sleeve. I got out at about 26, and then Terry was actually my baseball coach, to be honest. And Ryan Allen was on our team. Just so you know.
Strike two.
Sexton Roofing, another, anyways. But I lost my train of thought, but go ahead.
The funding streams is all.
Oh, yeah,
I
so-
was just
yeah.
stating that I was impressed that you're aware of where these funding streams have been, where they're coming from, where
Yes.
they're going. Any members of the committee like to ask a question? Councilor McGivern?
Thank you, Councilor Lisi, and Israel, thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Just to fill in a little bit here, now you're working with Mike Moriarty?
Yes, now I work with Mark Moriarty and
Just what are you doing with him? I
I'm the
see a
community
title, but-
engagement director. So my job at One Holyoke, because we are a nonprofit 501c3 and actual community development corporation, Old Holyoke usually focused on the brick and mortar aspect mostly, and that's how Mike explains it. As Mike came in, he's done some research on other community development corporations within the state. They all have a community engagement aspect where they try to provide services to the residents that they serve or the communities that they serve. My position is a fairly new position. Actually, I'm the first person ever hired at One Holyoke CDC. So I am kind of, how do you say it? Developing the path for the community engagement position. So what I have been doing is trying to build the community that most of our properties are housed in, build it up more or less, and pretty much organizing community dinners, community basketball tournaments. Keep It Clean is to help inspire the community residents to take ownership of their own properties, and pretty much just try to change the culture until we have more of a foundation, which is the Portuguese American Club that we have purchased. We just haven't allocated enough funds to actually put it into place. We are working on smaller projects, but in the future, there's a pipeline that we will be hosting community movie nights once a month at the center, hopefully some readings. We plan to try to open the space up for the residents, turn it into sort of like a Flats community center where everyone can meet up. Hopefully I can reach out to Career Point, who I used to work for, so that they can come down and bring some workshops there. We're going to try to partner up with other entities within the city to make it more of a, because the Flats is sort of like a small island, if you really think about it. I grew up in the Flats. I understand the dynamics that happen in the community. Most people stay within and don't venture out. It's sort of a difficult thing to navigate when people don't want to leave that community. So the way I see it is if we could house everything within that community, then people won't be afraid to venture out to the next level.
Israel, just the other blank I wanted to fill in was, it looks like congratulations on your degree from Holyoke Community College. I have a
Yes.
degree from Holyoke Community College. I'm not going to tell you what year. But are you pursuing a degree at UMass?
I just graduated from UMass
You did
2 weeks
graduate.
ago.
Well,
Yeah.
congratulations.
And I just got accepted into the master's program for public policy.
Very nice. And what was your degree at UMass?
Sociology, the study of people, pretty much.
You kind of
3.6.
touched base on my final question, which is, I think it's pretty important to a lot of us, including that person behind you, Sue. I understand, you're looking to fill his position, but your former baseball coach. But we have a lot of issues in our parks, and I'm talking about the infrastructure of our
Yes.
parks. It's something that is shameful, something that we've recognized for a while, and we seem to keep, and I don't want to say the city council, I think we've made a good effort to try to put everybody in the right position to do good things. I know money is always an issue, but it seems to be we keep hitting a brick wall with the parks. And whether it's playground equipment or, fields or basketball courts, it's just, it sounds like encouragement has to be very loud to get something done, and then it still doesn't get done. And I'm not sure if this is a question, but can you talk about that for a while, what you see your role would be in the area of infrastructure?
So, the one strength that I know that I can bring to the table that would help, in a sense, I don't think it would, at the end of the day, I'm only one piece of a larger puzzle, and I can only do as much as I can to try to keep things moving in a certain direction. There are other pieces that are moving, and if they don't move, then I can't move. But what I know that I can do and I bring to the table is community organizing, and that's bringing people together to pretty much speak up on what it is that they want. So Illy Park, the basketball court, I mean, if it doesn't get built by the end of this summer, there will be a lot of angry Flats residents, not just here, but probably at the front door, Alex's front door too. I mean, every day in the Flats, they are literally asking me, when is it start? When is it going to start? When is it going to start? When is it going to start? I mean, that is the strength that I bring forth. I think also in regards to that, trying to find other funding resources where the city's technically not paying for something. So what I mean by that is a plan that I have for Elite Park when it's built, right, is to automatically start a basketball league for 14 to 17-year-olds. And the idea is to try to raise funds to run this league and have it become self-sustainable on its own. I think that's a bigger task for One Holyoke to take on, so I don't think I can do it as part of One Holyoke. It would have to be a partnership. I've already spoken to Harry Melendez and Omar Almodovar, who run the men's league. I'm thinking of mimicking something similar to what they're doing down in the Flats. And I think that if it's done effectively and efficiently, we can raise enough funds to be able to, just that park alone, maintain the infrastructure, possibly get donations, depending on, so the idea I have is bringing in teams from all over Western Mass to come into play right there. Competitive basketball, AAU teams come in and play, and you pay to play. That way you're providing the fees that we don't have to come out of pocket, more or less, or you're saving us from coming out of pocket to maintain the park while you're pretty much paying to play. So I can see myself possibly raising enough money to put up a scoreboard, possibly there. But who's going to maintain it then, or where will it be plugged in? So there's more to it. I don't know if that answers your question in regards to infrastructure, but that's where I can help out.
Excuse me? Answers my question in terms of your passion for basketball, which I mimic.
Well, my
because
passion for
I grew up
baseball,
at Avery
actually,
Field and learned how to play on a court there. And
Avery Field as
when I
well.
was a young alderman in Ward 4, we got 2 courts for Avery Field, but we had to fight for every hoop we put up. And basketball, despite what Springfield says, was born here in
Yeah,
the city.
I know
and
that too.
It's a passion for a lot of people. But if you keep that passion, which I think you will, my question and thoughts were also, to the playground structures that are next to the basketball
Yes, the
courts for the
playground
younger
structures.
people. And
So I'm gonna be honest, I don't like some of the ones that have been put up. I don't like the way they look. I don't think that they're even gonna be structurally sound for a long time. I think some of them, I mean, the one that we just put, where is it at? Across from Enlace. I hope it lasts a long time. I'm not trying to say in a negative way, but I passed by the other day and it's just the material that was used or the stuff that we used to put there, I don't think I would have. That's just me personally. That's my own thing. But I don't know. It depends on the budget. It depends on what you have to play with at the end of the day when it comes to that. So I don't.
Well, and your passion, because I think if you try for something, dreams do come true if you go after them. But thank you for your answers. Well done.
And I want to add to the point on the playgrounds. Now that I have a small child that actually uses playgrounds, you understand what is a good playground and what's not a good playground. And just having the best play structure doesn't make it a great playground, because if there's no trees nearby creating shade, like that play structure is absolutely like inaccessible. It's totally you're not able to utilize it. So just putting the best thing down on the ground doesn't necessarily make it a great play environment. And I think those are the types of things that we're going to hope you're looking to. It's not just building the biggest and the best, but how does it create an environment where you're able to play. We have former Commissioner Terry Murphy here who wanted to kind of pass the baton on some ideas of what.
If there's nothing from our other 2 city councilors, I would make the motion to suspend the rules and allow our former Commissioner of Parks and Rec to come in and address both the appointment and maybe give some insight to the position.
We have one last question from Councilor Sullivan before we invite you to speak, Mr. Murphy.
No, it's not a question, just a statement for the record. I'm familiar with the work Israel's done with at-risk youth around the city over the last few years. And it's not just a matter of the conditions of the park, but it's the opportunities that these present as an alternative to what these kids see on the street. The vehicle that these parks become to help at-risk youth by giving them good, safe venues and having programs that they can participate in at a young age. And he gets it, he understands this, and I think everybody can see here in just a few minutes the energy that he brings. I wish we could see this kind of energy on every commission. We'd have a whole different
Thank
city
you,
of
Mike.
Brooklyn. So, there we go.
Thank you, Counselor Sullivan.
Just made me turn red even though I can't.
Mr. Murphy, if you don't mind coming to the microphone. Yeah. And just make sure it's on. Give it a tap. Yeah, yeah.
And we know you know how to use them.
Well, don't forget, I didn't need a microphone in my day, Joe. But first of all, I wanted to come and endorse Israel. I mean, I've known him since he was 14 years old. He did not have an easy life. He's made it through some tough times. But at 14, I saw a lot of potential in the young man. He knows in a lot of ways what I thought about him then. And as I've seen him in the last 7, 8 years, I've seen the young man, the young boy, become the kind of young man that I was kind of thinking he had that potential. So I'm very happy that he will be taking over for me, and there are challenges, and I think his enthusiasm is certainly something that is beneficial to any commission, and I think he will question when things should be questioned, and not just accept this is the way it is. I will say, and since I'm not sure if the other part that I was going to do today is going to happen, I'm going to take a few minutes to make some of it happen here. Councilor McGivern's question to you about infrastructure and projects. I mean, I can tell you in my 5+ years on the commission, I pushed for a lot of projects. I pushed for Roberts Field. I pushed for McKenzie. I pushed for Crozier Field Crozier Field safety and tennis courts. I pushed for the Susie Park that you're talking about, which has now been made for youth. I think our goal was for age up to 6 or 7, as opposed to teenagers. But part of my major concern, and the reason I did resign, is the frustration over not getting a commitment to live, to get things done. You have approved monies, and that's great. But if we approve monies, but we don't try to emphasize, well, let's get the project done, and the pool's a perfect example of that. I mean, we started talking about the pool in 2014. You approved a bond in December of 2016, and we will not have a pool again in the summer of 2018, and that should not happen. And there's got to be, and one of my goals was to encourage the city council somehow to become more involved. Now, obviously, you can't do the day-to-day stuff, but getting updates on projects, on what's going on. I mean, we kept getting reports saying, we're in good shape, this is going to happen. Susie Park was 4 months behind. It should have been done so when kids got out of school in June of last year, the park would have been ready. And the Parks Commission was fully under the understanding that that was going to happen. We had a contractor all set to do it, and then the city decided to go another direction. It wasn't done until October. So we went a summer in between what we're going to do with this particular playground. In the pool, certainly another example. The other thing I would strongly suggest, and you are in a position, if you get appointed, to make suggestions as to what should be done. We toured all the parks. We tried to see what needed to get done. One of the things was taking down the building at Springdale, the storage building at Springdale, which was falling over and waiting for some kid to try to climb the roof and fall in and get killed. So we moved on things, but we can't do it if we don't have authority. And right now, the Parks Commission does not have authority on projects. We can encourage things, and we have, but it's very frustrating when you go to commission meeting after commission meeting and you're told, we're going to be okay, we're going to get this done. The concession stand restroom at McKenzie, which we thought was going to be done in May of 2017. It's my understanding they might be getting it in the next couple of days before the Blue Sox start. I mean, there's all those kind of things that are taking place. And the other thing is, I don't even know if this is possible, but we review what we want to get done, and we think we get an estimate as to what it might cost, and then we get a bond, and then we go out and find out that we can't do what we said we were going to do with that bond. And I know Councilor Bartley has put an amendment because we have to make some changes in terms of what was getting done. So there's a lot of things that could be done differently, and I would really encourage you, I mean, I encourage the mayor, and I respect the mayor, he's put money up. Obviously, I've had frustration in the last couple of months with the mayor in terms of pushing a project. I know I was the moderator or the MC, whatever you want to call it, at the Susie Park dedication, and I said there, we need to get going so we have the pool in 2018. Whoever we have to get together to do it needs to be there. And I was told we're going to get it done. And obviously, it did not happen. So those are the frustrations that we can face, and I know you had some questions. So. But I just think if we might be better off saying this is what we want to get done, go out and get a bond, or go out and get bids, and then decide if it's worth the bond. Because it's more frustrating when you think you're going to do these things, and then you find out, you know what, we got to take this one out, we're going to take this one out, we're going to take this one out in order to get it done. And I also think we end up with a lot of smaller projects because of the way it's done now.
Is there a set of bylaws that you're following that outline the series of events to occur in that order as opposed to the order that you're suggesting? Is there something that binds you in terms of process?
Yes.
In terms of seeking the bond first and then getting the bids?
Yes. And I think Terry's aware of it, and it is frustrating. It's called Chapter 30B. It's backwards. It's backwards for the entire state, and it's the way we have to do business when it comes to development and to using, bonding. We have to put money up front just to get the bid to go out, and then we get the bid back. By the time we get the wheels ready to rolling, things change, and all of a sudden you're out of scope, and everything becomes very frustrating. Israel, if there's anything you're taking in notes from this man here, is communication is what this is about.
Sounds like there's
We're not the
money-
board of directors for the mayor, and we can't tell the mayor what to do, but we work with the mayor. And,
Sounds like there's money allotted, and
Yeah.
then when it's allotted, it gets pinched, and by the time you get to do the project, the money's gone.
I'm just putting it in a nutshell. 30B is not the best way to do business. It's designed to protect the taxpayers' monies,
Can I make
but it's overkill. It's not the way the private sector would do business, and they would get better deals.
Can I just make one more point there?
Of course you can.
The reality is, and I don't want to point, and I won't point any fingers at any individual. I just think the process that we go through, and if the funding, obviously that's, you can't break the law, but the other process, when we do have the funding and we do things, it's got to be a priority, and there's got to be someone pushing the priorities. And I mean, the Parks Commission, I know we, at every meeting, would say, what's the update, what's the update? But we don't have any authority on the people that are doing the projects. And the other thing is, up until very recently, I don't think all the people involved, including LE Courts, were all together in trying to make the project get completed in a timely fashion. So people have got to get together. And obviously the one that can bring everybody together is the mayor, but I also think the city council, if you say, hey, look, we funded this thing, we expected this project. Right now, there'll be people, senior citizens who used to do that swimming from 9 to 11 in the morning at that pool that haven't had it now for 5 summers. Kids that don't have any other place to go. And those things should not happen. They should be a priority. We got the money, let's make it a priority to get it done. And so those are my frustrations, and I appreciate the time.
The other frustration, also is this department was separated into 2 departments for good reason.
DPW,
To take use of staff and better use of staff and not to have, redundant types of jobs. But when it comes to infrastructure, the DPW plays a role as much as the Parks Department does. And it's frustrating for the Parks Department to work with the other departments when they see what they need and try to push it forward. And I'm not making excuses.
No.
That's something that we have to overcome because we saved a lot of money by using one staff to do both jobs.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Council Bartley?
Yeah. I'd raised my hand earlier, so, but thank you. Israel, thanks for your willingness to volunteer for this and serve. I'm glad Counselor Sullivan's here because, and I'm really encouraged to hear about your proposal maybe for some adult leagues,
Youth leagues.
youth leagues, and then, I've worked with Mike and then Harry and some other folks on Paper City Basketball and donate to that as well, so that's very exciting. So I'm just going to make a couple points, and I'm going to clarify a couple things that were said as well, and then I'm just going to add a couple small things, and you can comment at any time. I think one of the things that Terry mentioned, which I was going to mention, you've got to, and I know you will, familiarize yourself with every park in the city. Okay?
Yes.
So that's important, and I know you'll do that.
I've done that since I was like 12.
That's, yeah, so there's parks way out in West
Point,
Holyoke, every
Jones
ward
Point,
is a park.
Glowtech.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you've got an inherent, really, an interest because of your athleticism and just
Yeah.
interested in being in the public park, so that's very exciting. I want to clarify one thing. The reason we inserted into ordinance what we now call is the Bartley Amendment, I didn't name it, but I wrote it and approved by our law department. The reason we did that is a serious reason, is because funds were being diverted out of a bond for non-uses relevant to the original bond. That is nonsense. Now it is illegal. That's why we did it. And it was diverted by the administration. Now, I've said comments before here on the mic. People, oh, Counselor, you're so mean to the. No, I'm not being mean. I'm just stating, I respect the mayor, I respect the mayor's office. But when things like that happen, I don't like it. And fortunately, we had enough members of this board to pass the ordinance. It's never unanimous. But we had enough members to pass the ordinance, and now it's in law. And now if they make a change, it has to come back to city council. So never mind 30B. 30B is an important law. I think it's a vital law because it's one of the great procurement laws in the whole country. It's about public and consumer protection. So you can familiarize yourself with that the best you can. You should also familiarize with the dynamics of your board that you're on. It's a 3-person board. As I said before, I can't tell you how frustrated I get sitting over there and I try to propose something and I hear, no! Well, why? They don't have to say why. They just say no. Why? Either they hate my guts, or they don't like. But they don't ever say why. It's very frustrating. So I encourage you, if you do, most votes down there are going to be a majority yes. We know that. But if you do have a no vote, you should at least put it on the record as to why in a reasonable tone, and then maybe advocate down the road for your position if you can get another dynamic. But it's important to get on the record. Here, we don't have to get on the record. We just vote. Sometimes we just say no. Okay, whatever, big shot. But it would be nice if you could do that. CPC, we touched on that. You want to, and I'm so glad you mentioned the budget because things are controlled by a budget.
Yeah.
You can march on the mayor's office all day long, but it's all about the money. So you are now going to be in a fiduciary capacity. You've got to understand that we can't necessarily have everything we want, but we can do the best we can. With the CPC, however, there's not going to be another stream of revenue. There is a member of the Park and Rec Board, I forgot who it is, but they serve on the CPC. That's going to be $500,000 more or less annually. You should make sure you get feedback presented on the record as to what we're doing with the open space part of CPC by your person who's a liaison. That's very important. So you should be aware of that. You should also be aware that the dynamic set up years ago under former mayor, how the Park and Rec is under the Board of Public Works, I don't agree with that. I wish it was a separate, distinct department like it used to be, but I'm not in a position, where there's no votes on here to change that dynamic. We don't have the votes or the willpower at this point. That's got to come from somewhere else. But you are subject to the Board of Public Works, which is Mike McManus, who's the General Superintendent of the Department of Public Works. So you've got to familiarize yourself with Mike McManus and the other people on that board. And so Mike will come to the meetings. You already know Terry Shepard, and we're lucky to have Terry as our commissioner.
Mr. Listowski, he was also a coach.
That's important.
And I know Libby, she's on the board of One Holyoke CDC.
And I believe Libby is the liaison to the CPC.
She might be.
She is. I'm positive of that. So that's important to get feedback. Well, what's happening with the CPC, Libby?
I'm well aware of the CPC too. I've been
because
paying attention to that.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
money, and there you go. And you should also be aware that there are funds from Community Development Block
Yep,
Grant.
CDBG.
That's a whole separate,
With Alicia. I learned a lot of that too.
Wonderful. Okay.
At One Holyoke CDC. Yeah.
and so those are it can't be used in West Holyoke, but they can be used in wards 1 and 2, part of Ward 3, part of Ward 4, and very small part of Ward 7. But you should be aware of that. So where those funds can be used and what needs can be met in the parks for CDBG monies. So you have now we talked about bond with monies, we talked about CPC monies, and we talked about CDBG. So now you've realized there's a lot more authority that comes to that board than just sitting there and having somebody tell you, well, this is how it's going to be. Well, that's not how it's going to be, because you've done your homework. So it's important that you get some feedback. The last thing I want to say, and this is another point of frustration with me, is that we do pass ordinance here that affect the parks. And and we pass a lot of things that affect the parks, and I believe they're communicated to Terry Shepherd. And they should be taken up on a regular basis by the Park and Rec, and they should be implemented in a reasonable amount of time, small one, but we have no smoking. Councilor Soto is, in fact, is the one that proposed that. And I think that one actually did pass unanimously, one of the few things we did
So
pass.
there's no smoking at the parks?
No smoking in parks, actually in public buildings, and yet we have ashtrays right outside the front door here and over on Dwight Street. Can you imagine that?
So I would,
And there's
I think I would say the enforcement part, I don't know how much of that falls on Parks and Rec.
very hard, but a
That's the
little.
part.
I mean, I am Mr. Anti-sign, like you to the
Me too.
nth degree.
I hate the no Han Gale signs. They
Thank-
drive me crazy.
But maybe a subtle but effective sign that says no smoking, and in English and Spanish, in just maybe a couple strategic places. That's just a little example. But
I
there are-
respect that.
But there are lots of other things that we pass. So you want to make sure that you as a commissioner are aware of the communications from City Council. And so, Madam Chair, I think I've hit all the ones I want to. So thank you and good
thank
luck,
you.
okay?
So it seems, based on what we've heard here, that you're well positioned to make this appointment very successful for the city. So I'm very excited.
Motion recommend?
Motion made and seconded to approve the appointment and recommend to the full city council. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 3-0. Thank you so much for coming down
You
tonight.
guys, it was a pleasure.
And with that, I need to excuse myself because my babysitting time is running out. And I'm going to turn the chairing of the meeting over to Councilor McGivern. And so we'll need you here for a few.
Mike, are you staying?
We're gonna need one of you. All right, there's 2 more items. Hey, we just need one of you. We just need the quorum. It's a body of 3, so we just need, yeah.
No, I understand the math of it, but
Item number 5 is a mayoral appointment of Liana Preston. Thank you. I had it until you said it, Liana. Almost, I'm just kidding. To the Commission of Disabilities, one of our more important commissions. Liana, would you please come forward? Just let me do business here first. The mayor is appointing you as a member of the Commission of Disabilities. Your address, I believe, is 1081 Hampden Street here in Holyoke. The term will expire in March of 2021. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Liana, welcome. And we appreciate you stepping forward. We use this committee for a number of things, but one that seems trivial, but is very important. But the committee serves a lot of different things. Would you like to talk about yourself and give us some insight as to why you'd like to serve on this commission?
I've been a resident of the Holyoke for the past 31 years, so almost my entire life. I'm the mother of a student that is on the autism spectrum. He also has epilepsy. So this is something that is part of my daily life, making sure that a person has what they need and has access appropriately wherever they go, based on what their needs are. Addition to that, I have spent the last 10 years working for a nonprofit, advocating for those less fortunate persons that tend to struggle with just their day-to-day lives in one capacity or another. Currently, it's with the low-income home energy assistance program, so persons who are having difficulties with their heating bills. We assist persons who have disabilities in those aspects as well. I've familiarized myself quite lengthily about the utility consumer rights and where persons with disabilities need to be served by utility companies across the state. But in short, disabilities is basically part of my life every single day. I've actually spent the last year myself being partially disabled. I'm currently in remission from stage 3 metastatic breast cancer, which affected my lungs as well, and made life pretty difficult for me for the last year. But I believe that my life experience, has lent me the information that I need in order to further the needs of persons who are disabled in this city, and ensuring that they have safe access to everything across the city, everywhere they go.
Well, again, thank you for coming forward, and thank you for sharing. The chair will open up to any committee members that have any questions. Councilor Bartley?
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure.
I get a little aggressive with some other commissioners, but you're different. So this is a different board,
Sure.
and you're volunteering, and this is really right from the heart. So thank you very much for that. I would just admonish you that sometimes disability commissions, because I serve on ordinance, so the way it works, we file an order and we send it to ordinance commission with a copy to disabilities. And the disability commission, one of the things for handicap placards, especially if it comes before us, there's many things you do, but they have to do due diligence.
Absolutely. So one of the other things that I do in my professional life is I oversee the policy in the LIHEAP program where payments and things are concerned. I have spent the last 8 years familiarizing myself with policy, with the program, the ins and outs, what's allowed, what's not allowed. I am a policy nerd, as it were. So if there's an ordinance that comes through, something that needs to be followed, something that needs to be sought after, and ensured that it goes to the letter,
Well, a lot of
I can promise you that is something that is going to be absolutely done.
and it's going to serve you very well. A lot of this is creature of state law. The good thing is there's a fair amount of experience on that commission, so they can certainly direct you to the sources that you need. And with that, Mr. Chairman, first of all, so I said thank you, so I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm good.
Thank you, Councilor Bartley. Leanna, I just have one. Sorry. I have one question, Leanna. And you spoke very well, and I think I've heard you loud and clear. One of the items that I said was trivia, and we kind of connect with this body on a regular basis, is a simple ordinance where we are asked to create a handicap parking spot on a city street for someone who has a handicap placard issued by the state.
Sure.
We can't designate that to an individual, but by working with our engineer in the DPW and by working with the commission, we want to make sure that the individual we know has a placard doesn't have off-street parking and needs and will use the on-street parking
Absolutely.
on a regular basis. And we just ask that, as your role, that, you review some of those things, and that's been done on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, because I think Joe makes a good point on that, but the reverse is true also. So sometimes handicap spots, where they're designated as such, are no longer being used. So you've got to, as you go around the city and the parking areas, you've got to be cognizant of that too. And you've got to familiarize yourself with who the ward counselors are and how to reach out to them and say, you know, geez, Counselor LeBron Martinez, I don't think anybody's really using that handicap parking spot anymore in my observations. And so do you want to, you know, maybe file an ordinance to rescind that? Because we've had so many debates down here as far as limited parking in downtown and our frustration with the parking situation. I mean, it just, it's incredible.
Right, so everything needs to move with the times, and that includes overseeing spaces, how they're being used, whether or not they're being used, and by whom. Obviously, that is also very important. So it goes with, okay, who's living here now? How many people are coming down here on a day-to-day? You know, what are the volumes? And that actually involves watching traffic patterns. And those are things that I'm familiar with. And I can also promise you that city councilors will be very, very familiar with me.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Again, Leanna, thank you for sharing. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I think.
Councilor Bartley?
Make a motion to recommend.
Motion made and seconded that we approve the appointment to the mayor and recommend that to the full city council.
Thank you for your time.
And I want to thank you for sharing your health issue. One person that's very close to me, my wife, is in the same position, and
Good luck
she's
to
very
her.
open, and same to you.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck.
Thank you for your time.
Motion, we take item number 6 off the table, Mr. Chair.
Motion made second to take item number 6 off the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item number 6 is also a communication from the mayor dated April 25th of this year. Dear council member, subject to your approval, I hereby appoint the following individual to serve on the library board of directors for the city of Holyoke. Ms. Danielle Brown of 3 Magnolia Avenue here in Holyoke. Ms. Brown will replace Patrick Leahy, who will serve, and she will serve a 2-year term that will expire in February of 2020. On that motion, Danielle, I did not set this agenda, and you are last. But the word is that we always save the best for last. So
Indeed.
welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to share anything about your background and about, again, thank you for coming forward, but about your background and how you might be able to serve the library?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with a lifelong love of literacy and education. My professional background is in educational nonprofits, and I have experience in everything from programming to fundraising, from early childhood ed all the way up to the collegiate level, and a deep love and appreciation for libraries. I think they're the heart of communities, and that they're a really lovely way to make sure that all community members have access to education. So when I saw that there were openings on the board, I thought it would be a perfect fit.
Thank you. Thank you. And are you familiar with the board and a body, I'll give you a hint, a wonderful body known as the Friends of the Holyoke Public Library, and what's going on there?
Yes, so I have attended my first library board meeting just this month and got sort of a basic rundown. And then I am also tomorrow attending my first Friends of the Library meeting. I'm going to be the board's representative to the Friends group. So I know that they are working through some issues about whether or not they are still a standalone or whether they'll be sort of folded into the larger library group. But they're passionate folks regardless.
They are wonderfully passionate. We went through well, historically they've always been there, but we went through a period of time, most recently with the bonding for the reconstruction of the library, which was very successful, both from the city side and both from the fundraising side, which essentially was the Friends of the Library. The message was clear, and it's still clear in my mind, is we have to merge at some time because we have city employees within the library itself. And we have to mesh with state law, city ordinances, and have the umbrella of the city be over all the employees and in charge of the building that is owned by the city. Now, not everybody in the Friends of the Library are going to say that the exact way, and I don't say that in a bad way. but they have done so much in terms of work for the library. We also have to respect that. So if you could work, it sounds like you're a step ahead of the whole thing. If you could work towards getting us on the same page, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
Any questions from the committee? Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, so I want to thank you so much for being, for willingness to serve in this position. It's really important. One thing I don't, my 6+ years on this board, I don't think I have once seen a meeting minute come from the library board or the Friends of the Library Board. I don't think I can't recall one. So it would be nice, since you're now going to have a foot in both areas, that once minutes are approved, if you could make sure that minutes are forwarded to Mr. Allen, who sits behind us, and so that he, or even better, to Brenna Murphy, who is McGee, who's a city clerk, so we should have, just be aware. The only time we really see board commissioners is when there's a problem. But I really appreciate the fact about your background, that with programming and fundraising, I really appreciate hearing more about that. And frankly, this board with Ms. Brown, you cannot believe how many people watch our city council meetings. I still can't get used to it, how many people, there's 3 cameras around here. People watch the meetings. Now, they don't necessarily read our minutes, but I read the minutes. I read your board minutes. I read every board that comes through me. But I don't always reach out and get them. In fact, I don't, because it gets by me. But if they're sent to me, and it inevitably generates ideas and sometimes a conversation about what we can do better. I'm not saying, bring back a bookmobile or something from the night. I'm not saying that. But there might be something a little more modern, 2018 or 2020 even, if we get crazy. There might be a way to connect the library to the rest of the city. And that's something that you might be able to get your arms around and then present it to the city council, or at least communicate it to the city council so we can hear more about what's happening at our beautiful library, instead of just hearing about how the building leaked or whatever it was, something along those lines. I will say this, I do get emails once in a while from the Friends of, when I hear about, the mini golf or some things like, so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to hear more about that, and it really takes somebody who can, grab the bull, if you will, by horns and then.
Yeah, well, I think part of my background in nonprofits, when you work in little nonprofits, you have to wear a lot of hats. And so I've done everything from program development to communications to fundraising. And so I have a lot of ideas. And, I definitely think there's room for modernization. I think that, many of the city entities have sort of fledgling profiles on social media. I think we could do a lot more with that. I think, the community is probably a great source of really interesting ideas and information.
Well, you just raised a great point right there, and if I may, Mr. Chair, we had before us at the committee that I chair, we affectionately call the DGR committee, we had before us last week a couple board members from Holyoke Media Inc., which is it's another nonprofit affiliated with the city, and it's going to be setting up shop over here at 1 Suffolk Street, One Court Plaza now, Joe, I think is what it's called, right next to the courthouse. And, I didn't hear word one from them about connecting with the Holyoke Public Library. I heard connecting with Holyoke Public Schools. Well, no kidding. They, 15% of the money has to go to Holyoke Public Schools, so they connect with the city council. Okay, well, that's great, but we're already on camera. Let's hear some. We should get the library in touch with Holyoke Media so we could get the word out more. In fact, they're going to add a 3rd channel. So we have channel 12, channel 15. They're going to add a channel 23, I believe, which should be coming online soon. And there should be more events promoted on the, people watch those channels too. I mean, you can't believe it, but they watch them. And they look for the information going on in the city. And maybe there are some things about Holyoke Public Library, but maybe there could be a lot more. So you need to be aware of Holyoke Media coming on.
Sure, thank you.
Coming online as well. So, thank you.
Is there any further questions from the committee?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council.
Danielle, do you have any questions for us?
I do not.
Okay. Motion on the floor then is that we recommend the appointment of Danielle Brown to the library board and wish her nothing but the best. We'll recommend this to the full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
And a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
This will be before the council next week, and the clerk will notify you. Our chairman for the night didn't tell this to everybody, but the clerk will notify you. You'll have to go in and sign a paper with her and ready to go. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys, gentlemen. Thank you for filling in. Mr. Leahy, I'm not sure if Rebecca announced, but he had a unknown event with one of his children tonight, a positive event, an award-giving event that just conflicted and was the schedule was wrong. Thank you, man.